Hello and welcome back to another Prismatica DevLog. It has been 6 months since the last devlog was posted. That was the one about the, the characters and the character material, all that fun stuff. A lot has changed since then behind the scenes. I started to take a little bit of time off in January, just to, relax a little bit. And, I was only doing like 2 or 3 hours a day on the game at that point. And, it was great to have a good relax. And then towards the end of January, or maybe it was the start of February actually, Andrew and I decided to part ways and work on different projects. Andrew had been doing all of the kind of core gameplay stuff in C++, but we kind of, decided amongst us that we both have very different amounts of time to dedicate to a project. So Andrew's currently working on his own project in his own time because, he works full time, absolutely understandable, which I've linked in the description. So I encourage you to check that out, join his Discord, see what it's all about. And so with that change of, team dynamic, I've jumped back in as the, the gameplay programmer person, and we've moved back to blueprints, which I'm sure all of you are very happy to hear. But that being said, my time spent working with Andrew has taught me like a ton of much better coding practices. Andrew basically taught me how to code properly. And so this time around, I'm actually kind of confident in what I'm doing when I'm designing, gameplay systems. If you have been really looking forward to playing Prismatica, if you really resonate with it, I wouldn't really look at this as a setback per se. I would kind of look at it as me honing my skills over, the course of a year so that the end product is going to be, more polished, more fleshed out than it would have been otherwise. And while we're on the topic of honing your skills over the course of a year so that the end product can be as good as it can be, today's video is sponsored by none other than Skillshare. Skillshare is an incredible platform full of very, very high quality tutorials and educational content that allow you to level up your skills. I've been playing Elden Ring an absolute shit ton, and one thing that you notice even just from this trailer is all of the different environments have different color schemes that it just makes everything incredibly beautiful to look at. Now, it's probably safe to say that you are an independent games developer, and you might not actually come from an art background. So if you are looking to get better at, the art side of game development, I would recommend Easy Peasy Pellets, Quick Color Tips to Transform Your Work by Sarah Beth Morgan. If you want access to this course and thousands more like this, you can get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare in the link below for the first 1,000 clickers. So again, thank you very much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. So you're probably wondering, hey, Charles, when is the game coming out? When's the game going to be finished? And my answer to that is, hopefully we will have a game this year. Maybe by like September or something. Now, the reason I say a game is because I've decided to kind of scale back the scope of the original project. And rather than kind of create this sort of big narrative-driven, semi-open world kind of game, I've decided that it would be kind of more feasible and probably just a better idea in general to do a more linear, like repeatable and, shorter play length game. Kind of like a roguelite in a way. I know that roguelites are like all the rage these days, and, I'm just jumping on that bandwagon. But it'll basically just be a game that really showcases the important mechanics of, the dream game that I want to create. And I think by scaling back the scope like this, it sort of allows me to focus on those core aspects that, will make the final game what it is. Now, keep in mind, this isn't going to be just like a demo version of, Prismatica, the big game, the mega game. It will be like a full-on standalone game that I can just release and hopefully get that experience of, you know, releasing a game. And so the goal is for it to be a fully finished, playable game that, you know, it's not going to get updates until it becomes Prismatica, the big game. It will just be a little standalone game with all of the core mechanics that make Prismatica what it is. So the main thing that I was working on in February was the Prismatica action component system. Very similar to what Andrew was doing in C++, but obviously in Blueprint this time. And the gist of the system is that every action that a character can commit needs to be, like, exclusive from one another. So, you know, I can't attack while I'm in the middle of a dodge roll and that kind of thing. But the aim this time around, as opposed to the first time that, you know, I was just kind of jumping in the deep end in Blueprint, was to make it completely modular. And so the way that I've done that is through the use of components. So there's an actor component called the Pris action component, and this is like the generic action component. This sort of outlines all of the behavior that is shared across all actions. That being that an action has a try function, so we're going to try and do this action. Are we in the right movement mode? Then we're going to check if there is already an action being performed. So every character has a variable, which is just a reference to the current action component. So if the current action component reference is null, so there isn't any action being performed, we will start the action that we're trying. So when we start an action, we set this action to be the current action component. So if we go back up to here and we try another action, and the current action component is not null, so there is another action currently being performed, meaning this will return is valid, then we will try and override the current action that is being performed with the incoming action. And so what this does is just says, can this be overridden by actions? So if we wanted to be able to perform another action in the middle of another action, for example, to dodge roll, you need to dodge again in the middle of a dodge step. So a dash is just like that. But if you dash again in the middle of a dash, you'll do a dodge roll instead. So that's one example of, you know, this being overridden. But most of the time an action can't be overridden, and so instead we will try and queue the action. So queuing the action just sets the queued action to be whatever the current incoming action is, like the action that we tried. And so when an action ends, which is specified within each, like, child action, we hit this finish action event, which is in the action manager component, which basically just says, set these booleans to false, set the current action montage to null, set the current action component to null. We want to, like, test and see if combat mode is held down. So if you're holding down shift, you're in combat mode. But if I let go of shift in the middle of a combat action, I don't want to exit combat mode until that action is finished. So if I, you know, dodge roll and then let go of shift, then it will exit combat mode after that dodge is finished. The same goes for entering combat mode. So if I jump and then enter combat mode, it will enter combat mode when I've landed, when that action has completed. So jumping and landing are actions. And I can also queue up combat actions in the middle of non-combat actions. So if I jump and then press shift and left click, then I will attack as soon as I land. Then immediately after that, we activate the queued action, which just gets the queued action component and it tries to do that action. The whole thing is set up so that it's extremely modular, so I can just add a new action whenever. For example, let's look at, you know, an attack component, like a basic melee attack. So what happens here is we implement the start action function from the parent class. Then we call the parent start action, which does all of the, you know, the back-end stuff, like setting this action as the current action, setting these booleans, you know, dealing with stamina, all that kind of stuff. And then we just do what we need to do for this action to actually happen, which is essentially find the right attack montage to play, change combat stance, then set the rotation mode so that, you know, we've got disabled rotation, rotate the character towards the target, broadcast the action to the AI characters, and then when the blend out happens of this montage, we call on action end, which then we'll call finish action, which then, you know, will do any queued actions. It will toggle combat mode if that's needed. So this section here is the logic that happens in the action. So, you know, play the animation, or try interact with this object, interact with the door, climb up a ladder, anything like that all happens here. And all we have to do is say this action has started, and that will prevent it from being, you know, interrupted by any other actions. And then this action has ended, which will activate the queued action. It will try and activate the queued action. And it will also, you know, if there was no queued action, it'll just allow you to commit another action. So I hope that kind of made sense. And I hope you can kind of see what the value of that is. You know, why it is so important to have a really robust and modular action system, because 99% of the game is you, the player, performing actions, and, you know, the AI's performing actions against you. So that took, you know, 10 to 20 days of just like non-stop absolute grind to get that really nailed and polished and that kind of stuff. And then after I had that done, I decided that I would try and release a test build for the patrons. They all got access to this current build of the game where you can spawn in AIs and fight them. So I've just set up a really simple AI. I mean, it's simple, but it's actually very hard to beat. And, you know, it's just a really placeholder health system, and you can spawn as many as you want with the T button. There's a lot of print string spam, as you can see on the left. And so now that I'm back in charge of the programming side of things, the rate of development has pretty drastically increased, because obviously I don't really have a life, and this is what I do full time. And now that I've kind of fleshed out all of the visual systems, I can just kind of go nuts with programming, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been like a whole lot of fun, and if you do want to join in on the fun, I do recommend following the twitch.tv/PrismaticaDev, where, you know, I work on this most days of the week. So with this video drawing to a close, I want to kind of make a promise to myself that there will be a new devlog every single month of this year. Even if it's a small one and it's just like one new system and some blah, 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 blah. I'd really like to do one devlog every month. That was something that I wanted to do last year, but, you know, the character system took quite a while to set up. But, you know, with the current rate that I've been doing things this year, it's definitely doable. And so with the promise of a new devlog per month, I've kind of decided to do like one system per month, or at least like have one goal per month that I can then talk about. So the Prismatica action component system, we talked about that. It's basically set up and ready to go. Currently, I'm working on damage, health, limbs, and armor, which are all sort of one big interconnected system. That's been a lot of fun. We've been doing that on stream lately. So for example, in the last stream that we did, we started to segment the body of the character into like more segments. So, you know, we can have the wrist of the character versus the hand of the character versus the, you know, the front of the diaphragm, or the back of the chest. Yep, back of the chest. We've got like the face, you know, well, that was the head top, but if we hit here, it would be the face. Yes. One of the big, like, core design pillars of the game is what you see is what you get. Like, everything should be visually represented as well as possible. The other kind of, I guess, experimental goal that we have for this game is to use as little user interface as possible. So experimenting with the idea of there's no health bars and there's no stamina bar, and try and like show all of that stuff just visually, and hopefully, you know, it will be more immersive as a result. And so, you know, having the armor system be quite accurate and realistic just helps build up this like player logic, you know, like the player needs to kind of figure out what the rules of the game are, and then that logic can be applied to, you know, everything throughout the game. It's just about consistency, really. I hope you're looking forward to a year filled with Prismatica devlogs, because I know I am. I know I'm just like super pumped to be working on this as often as possible, and it's just been an unreal experience to share it with, you know, everyone on Twitch. So I hope that you enjoyed this little devlog. I know there wasn't that much content to go over, but I figured, you know, it's better to just get it out of the way, catch everyone up with what's going on, and I hope that you're looking forward to the next one. So as always, there's links in the description to the Discord, to the Twitch, and to the Patreon. And before we go, I just want to shout out all of the patrons. I absolutely adore you guys, and I hope that you are all really enjoying the, you know, the tiny little test slice build that that I released on the Patreon. So I guess with that, we say goodbye. Goodbye.